Hello there, welcome to Africa News, bringing you the top stories on the continent, the headlines. The 2-year-old infected with the first case of Ebola in Mali has died this Friday. This is Mali's health minister says it's apparent that Ebola has been passed on. We bring you exclusive images from Kai, where that virus was being treated, alongside reactions from Bamako. Violence ahead of Sunday's elections. Tunisian police kill 6 suspected militants after ending a standoff in a Tunis suburb. We cross live to our correspondent for the latest. And to those familiar with his work, he's affectionately known as Nimble Fingers. We explore music from Madagascar's virtuoso guitarist, Teta. But first to our top story. Mali's health minister says it's apparent the country's first case of Ebola has been passed on, but says the situation is under control. A 2-year-old girl who visited Guinea died this Friday after testing positive for Ebola just a day earlier. Dozens who came into contact with her have been put in isolation at a hospital in Kai in western Mali. The WHO is warned of possible high-risk exposure after reports the toddler was bleeding as she travelled on a bus from Guinea. Meanwhile, Ivory Coast, which is currently Ebola-free, has launched a manhunt for a Guinean health worker who may have fled his country after becoming infected with the virus. Nicolas Germain brings you this exclusive report.
The town of Kai on Friday. It lies halfway between Dakar and Bamako. Its residents have just heard Mali's first Ebola case was treated here.
Kai is at a major crossroads, so we're a bit worried. But the authorities are well prepared.
In the capital, Bamako, residents are concerned.
Here in Africa, it's not easy for us to protect ourselves. We are very tactile, we all eat together.
What are the international laboratories doing? Why do they let people die when they could produce vaccines?
Just south of Mali in Ivory Coast, a manhunt has been launched. The authorities are looking for a Ghanaian health worker who was reportedly in contact with a patient who died of Ebola, but the health minister called for calm.
This Guinean man was only in contact with an Ebola patient. We don't know if he's ill because we haven't seen him. We must stay serene and avoid hysteria.
Both in Mali and in Ivory Coast, the governments stress there is no reason to panic. In these two nations, Ebola has only killed 1 person, whereas nearly 5,000 people have died in the 3 worst-hit countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Guinea.
Well, staying with this story, the World Health Organization says trials for an Ebola vaccine could begin in West Africa in December, with 200,000 doses possibly rolled out in the first half of 2015. In the US, clinical trials for 2 experimental vaccines seen as leading candidates have begun. Trials will also get underway in Gabon, Kenya and Mali, as well as Switzerland, Germany and Britain. In other news on the continent, Tunisian police have killed 6 suspected militants after storming a house in a Tunis suburb and ending a standoff. 1 man and 5 women were killed in the Rail and Oued Eli area. Violence comes a day after a policeman was killed in a shootout with the suspects. Tunisians will vote this Sunday in the first parliamentary election since the country's 2011 uprising. Today is the last day of electoral campaigning. Well, France 24's Chris Moore is in Tunis with the latest for us. Chris, what more do we know concerning today's violence in the suburbs of Tunis?
Details are still fairly sketchy and no firm link established between these events and the fact that there's a parliamentary election going on Sunday. What we do know is that the security forces surrounded this house very early in the morning on Thursday, just outside Tunis. That gave way to this siege. They say they were acting on information following the arrest of 2 other suspects in the south of the country. An Interior Ministry press conference today, they said that was part of an investigation into a group which was sending fighters to Syria. Security for a lot of Tunisian voters is high among their concerns going into this election. Are these events going to stop people from going to the polls? Well, no, not really. We have seen sporadic violence across the country increasingly since the revolution in 2011. There have been these ongoing clashes near the Algerian border between security forces and militants there. But the security situation in general is, as I said, one of real concern for Tunisians.
Now, Chris, amid this ongoing violence or sporadic violence, as you said there, how enthusiastic do Tunisians seem about Sunday's elections?
It's not exactly a case of election fever. Obviously, Tunisia has avoided the violence, the level of violence at least, seen in many post-so-called Arab Spring countries, particularly neighbouring Libya. At the same time, it's been a pretty chaotic transition. There have been 4 interim governments, a lot of political infighting, during which time many people feel their lot simply hasn't improved. It's not rare to hear people say that things were better under Ben Ali. A lot of the idealism has gone. A lot of it now is more about practical concerns like security and particularly the economy. Unemployment currently stands at 15%, a little bit higher than it was at the end of the Ben Ali era. In terms of who's taking part in this election, the biggest single political force remains the Islamist party Ennahda. Obviously, they have a very loyal electorate, but at the same time, they kind of blotted their copybook for many Tunisians when they were in power over the assassination of 2 opposition politicians. They were accused of not doing enough to stop that over economic mismanagement. On the other side, we've got a lot of former regime figures coming back for the first time, most notably in the NIDA Tunis party. They say they have the technical abilities to get the country back on its feet, although many Tunisians would perhaps rather have seen the back of them by now. So there's a little bit of case of politician fatigue going on.
OK, Chris Moore reporting from Tunis. Thanks for keeping us up to date. Well, next, the former world 800-metre champion Mobolani Muladzi has died in a car accident in his native South Africa. 37-year-old Muladzi won the world 800 metres title in Berlin back in 2009. He was also South Africa's first black athlete to be ranked #1 in the world. Well, let's take a look at some news in brief next. A car bomb in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula has killed 25 soldiers. Officials say the attack occurred near El Arish, northern Sinai. Jihadists on the peninsula have killed scores of security officers since ex-president Mohamed Morsi was ousted in 2013. Botswanans voted this Friday in elections pitting the ruling party against a growing opposition. President Ian Khama is seeking re-election based on economic stability and promises of reduced unemployment, but opposition parties are hoping for support from dissatisfied voters in urban areas. Provisional results show Mozambique's ruling Frelimo party has won presidential and legislative polls. The tally from the National Election Commission has given Frelimo 57% of votes, with the main opposition party Renamo gaining just over 36%. While results from October 15th polls will need to be ratified by the Constitutional Court. And finally, those familiar with the work of the Malagasy musician Teta refer to him as Nimble Fingers. The virtuoso guitarist is no stranger to transporting listeners to his native Indian Ocean island through his songs. The next report explores Teta's eclectic musical style.
Listening to Teta, it's easy to feel transported to Madagascar, to visualize its countryside, its colours, its sea. His music is based on the traditional style of southern Madagascar called sapiki.
I feel that music unites. I worked at developing the Malagasy style using sapiki, by blending it with everything I've ever heard, blues, jazz, funk. But underneath, there is always the sapiki bass that brings it all together.
Teta, the virtuoso musician, started learning the guitar as a child. Besides the strong sapiki influence, he says he gets his inspiration from certain 1960s musicians such as Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck. His music can feel trance-like. Teta considers it a remedy against depression.
Music is like medicine. It can cure all problems, whether mental or any other type of problem that you encounter in your life.
His nickname, Nimble Fingers, is well-deserved. And his soulful renditions place him midway between the traditional and the modern.
Well, that's where we leave this edition. We're back in about 45 minutes' time. Do join us then, but up next, more international headlines.
Beyond Business.
Successful startups are crucial for a healthy economy, but they need money to grow, and attracting investments is easier said than done. In the next Beyond Business, we look at how startups can get the money they need to succeed.
Beyond Business, en France 24, à france24.com.